My kid's bike was left by their driveway. They called the police. When I asked why, they said, because you people don't understand boundaries. I didn't argue. I just found their weakest point and pressed until they called the police themselves. We live in a normal neighborhood. Suburbs. Sidewalks. Lawn signs. One of those places where people wave but don't really know each other. The kind of place where most people just want to be left alone. That's all I ever wanted too. My kid, Alex, is 8. Loves riding their bike. Up and down the street. Nothing wild, just the usual stuff. We've got a long driveway, but sometimes they swing around and leave the bike near the curb, right by the edge of the next driveway over. That driveway belongs to Jen and Brian. They moved in about a year ago. No kids. Not very friendly. Always seem like they're waiting for you to step out of line. I've said hi maybe a dozen times. Always got a tight smile and a nod. Never more than that. So, when the cops showed up that afternoon, I was confused. I was in the garage. Heard the cruiser pull up. Figured maybe something happened on the block. A break-in or a missing pet. But no. One officer walked up and said, "We got a call about a bike left on someone's driveway." At first, I thought I misheard.
Sorry?
He pointed to the curb. That one. I walked out and saw Alex's red bike. Half the front wheel might have been touching the concrete edge of Jen and Brian's driveway, but barely. "She really called you about that?" The cop gave me a tired look. Said it's a recurring issue. Said you've been told before. That wasn't true. No one had ever said a word. Then he said, "Look, we're not writing anything up. Just maybe move the bike when it's not being used." I nodded, mostly out of disbelief.
Sure.
No problem. But inside, I was fuming. I looked over and saw them standing on their porch. Watching. Not hiding it.
Jennes arms crossed.
Brian with that little half-smile like he'd just won something. So I walked over.
Come.
"Hey," I said, "you called the police about my kid's bike?" Jen didn't blink.
Yes.
"Because you people don't understand boundaries." I froze. "You people?" I looked her right in the eyes. "I'm not white. My kid isn't either." I didn't need a translation for what she meant.
It wasn't just about the bike.
I wanted to say something. I wanted to go off. But I didn't. I just looked down at their front yard. There, right in the middle of the lawn, was Jen's pride and joy. A big pink plastic flamingo in a flower bed. She moves it around like it's a pet. Puts little hats on it in the winter. Once, I saw her dust it with a rag. That flamingo wasn't decoration. It was personal. And that's when I knew how I'd handle this. That night, I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smug look on Brian's face and heard Jen's voice saying, "You people." It wasn't just rude. It was like she thought we didn't belong there. Like we were a problem. The next morning, I made my coffee and looked out the window. There she was, Jen, out on the lawn, straightening the flamingo's beak like it was a centerpiece at a wedding. I stood there, sipping slow, thinking. I didn't want to do anything illegal. I didn't want revenge that could get me in trouble. I just wanted them to feel what we felt, that quiet, simmering rage when someone picks at your family over nothing. So I waited. Every week, Jen had a routine. Monday morning, she went to a yoga class. Always gone by 9:30. Brian worked from home, but he never left his desk, at least not during the day. I'd seen him through their window, hunched over his computer with those big gaming headphones on. That next Monday, I walked across the street at 9:45. I didn't touch the flamingo. I took pictures of it. I got every angle. Front.
Side.
The way it leaned. The placement in the flower bed. Everything. Then I went home, logged onto Etsy, and found a seller who made custom yard flamingos. I sent the photos and asked for a replica, same size, same color, same tiny tilt of a neck. It took 2 weeks to arrive. The morning it came, I took a deep breath and went out during Jen's yoga hour. I swapped it. My flamingo, perfectly matched, went into the flower bed. Hers, I wrapped it in a towel, set it in the back of my garage, and locked the door. Nothing happened at first. Days passed. I'd see her walk around it. Sometimes she squinted at it,
Tilted her head.
but she never said anything. Maybe she thought something looked off but couldn't put her finger on it. Then Saturday came. That's when things got interesting. Brian was mowing the lawn. Jen came out with a spray bottle, started misting the flamingo like it was a bonsai tree. Then she suddenly stepped back, staring hard. I saw her call Brian over. They both stood there looking at it. Then, this part made me laugh. Brian tapped it. Like maybe it was fake. Like maybe someone had swapped their precious bird with a decoy. I watched them argue. I couldn't hear the words, but their faces said enough. She stormed back inside. The next morning, there was a camera on the porch. One of those little black domes screwed into the eave above the garage. Another one faced the yard. They never said anything to me. But the cameras said plenty. They knew something had happened. They just couldn't prove it. A few more days passed. Jen wasn't acting normal. She used to come out every morning to check the flamingo. Now she stared at it like it betrayed her. She didn't move it.
Didn't dust it.
Just stood there sometimes with her arms crossed, like she was waiting for it to confess. Then one afternoon, a package showed up at my door. No return label. Just my name and address, written in tight handwriting. I opened it in the kitchen. Inside was a note.
Typed.
You think we don't know? We do. Stay away from our property. We've contacted the HOA. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I laughed. They still had no clue what had really happened. But I knew something they didn't. The HOA? I've been on the board for 2 years. When I brought up the situation, just casually mentioned that a neighbor had installed security cameras facing my yard without talking to me first, they got concerned. There's a whole section in our bylaws about outdoor surveillance. It has to be pointed at your own property unless you get neighbor permission. I didn't file a formal complaint yet. I just let them know what was going on. The next week, an HOA letter showed up on Jen and Brian's door. 2 days later, one of the cameras was gone. The other had been tilted to face their own porch. Progress. But then things took a darker turn. One night, around 11 p.m., I was locking up the back door when I saw movement near the garage. I flicked on the side light. No one. But the gate to the backyard was slightly open. I checked the garage. Still locked. Still quiet. But the towel I'd wrapped the real flamingo in?
Moved.
A corner of it was sticking out from behind a storage bin. I hadn't left it like that. I froze. Either I was losing my mind, or someone had been inside. I didn't call the police.
Not yet.
But I did check my outdoor camera, one I installed facing my own yard, with full HOA approval. And at 10:54 p.m., it showed someone in a hoodie walking along the side of my house.
Too short to be Brian. Too wide to be Jen.
Someone else? The next morning, Jen was in her front yard again, acting normal. Too normal. Like she was putting on a show. That's when I realized something. They didn't want the flamingo back. They wanted control. And if they couldn't get it with the cops or cameras, they'd try something else. That's when I decided to go one step further. I didn't just want them to feel uneasy. I wanted them to question everything. I started small. First, I repositioned the fake flamingo by just an inch every morning. Tilted the beak slightly. Turned it a few degrees to the left. Moved it half a foot closer to the flower bed's edge. Nothing wild. Just enough to make Jen think she was losing it. She'd come out, stare at it, then go back inside. A few days later, I saw her come out with a tape measure. That was my confirmation. She knew something was off. Brian installed 2 more cameras. One on their upstairs window, another facing the side yard. They were losing their grip, and I could feel it. Then one Saturday morning, a truck pulled up to their house. It was a landscaping company. They'd hired a crew to dig up the front flower bed, remove the plants, replace the soil, tear everything out, including the flamingo. I watched from my window as Jen stood to the side, directing them. Her arms were folded, but her foot kept tapping like she was anxious. I waited until they left. That night, while they were out at dinner, they always left around 6:30 on Saturdays, like clockwork. I snuck across the yard, placed the real flamingo, their original one, back in the exact same spot it had been before. Same angle.
Same spot. No explanation.
No note. Just back. The next morning, their screams woke me up. Not angry screams.
Frightened.
Jen was yelling at Brian to check the camera footage. I stepped outside to get the paper like I usually do, pretending not to notice. But Jen ran straight toward me. "You think this is funny?" she shouted, her voice tight. I raised an eyebrow. "What?" "You put that thing back." I looked over. "Back? What do you mean?" She stared at me like she wanted to punch me. Brian came over and grabbed her arm. "We'll handle this." She pulled away. "No, he's playing games. He's been messing with our stuff for weeks. This is harassment. Do you have proof of any of that?" I asked calmly.
She didn't.
Because I hadn't done anything illegal. But she was about to. 3 hours later, 2 police cars pulled up. This time it wasn't about a bike. It was about a break-in. They accused me of trespassing and stealing private decorative property. They even had screenshots from their camera, blurry ones showing someone in my size and build placing something in their yard. The officer asked if I had anything to say. I smiled and said, "I'd like to see the footage from the night your original flamingo disappeared. Maybe that'll clear everything up." They went quiet. Because they didn't have that footage. Because they were the ones who had tried to sneak into my garage. I told the officer I had my own camera footage of someone in a hoodie trespassing on my property. And I offered to share it. That changed everything. Suddenly, it wasn't about a flamingo anymore. It was about who made the first move. The police didn't press charges on either side. Not yet. They said it was a neighborhood dispute and told us both to stay away from each other's property. But that visit left a mark. Jen and Brian weren't just annoyed now. They were paranoid. 2 days later, I got a call from my HOA board chair. Someone had filed a complaint against me. Said I was creating a hostile environment and harassing neighbors with unsettling behavior. I knew exactly who it was. Luckily, the board didn't act on it right away. They asked for evidence. I gave them everything I had: camera footage, police reports, the anonymous note, even the copy of the flamingo order. All of it. Then, I did something I hadn't planned. I invited the HOA chair to stop by and see something for herself. When she came over that Saturday, I walked her to my garage, opened the door, and showed her the real flamingo, still wrapped up and untouched. Her eyes widened. "You've had it this whole time?" she asked. I nodded. "They tried to break in and take it back. Now they're calling the police on me." She stared at it for a while, then back at me. "Why didn't you just give it back?" I thought about that. I wanted them to feel what it's like to have someone mess with your space, your peace, and then act like you're the problem. She didn't say much after that. Just left with a quiet, "I'll talk to the board." The next week, the HOA hit Jen and Brian with a formal violation. Turns out those cameras? Still not in compliance. And the hostile behavior complaint they filed backfired. The board saw it as retaliation. That would have been enough for most people to back off.
But Jen?
She doubled down. I started finding trash in my yard. Little things, candy wrappers, bits of paper towel, gum. At first I thought it was kids, wind, whatever. But it kept happening, always near the same spot by the mailbox. Then Alex came inside one afternoon, upset. "She called me a nuisance," he said. "Said I don't respect rules." I saw red. That night, I printed out every piece of evidence I had. Every message, every picture, every timestamp. I made a binder. Labeled sections. Annotated the photos. I dropped it off on the front porch of their house. No note. No threats. Just the truth. The next morning, it was gone. And 2 hours later, I saw Brian standing in the driveway, on the phone with the police. This time, they called the cops on themselves. Because the binder had intimidating content. I watched from my porch, sipping coffee, as they tried to explain to the officer that a collection of factual documents was somehow harassment. The officer flipped through the binder, nodded slowly, then asked, "Did you actually read this?" I don't know what the cops said after that. But Jen didn't come out of the house for the next 3 days. 3 days of silence felt strange. No trash in the yard. No passive-aggressive looks. No security lights flashing on randomly at night. I started thinking maybe it was finally over. But then, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, I got a knock at the door. Not police. Not HOA. It was Brian. He looked different. Noshmagrin. No crossed arms. Just tired. I need to ask you something, he said. I didn't invite him in. Just stepped outside and closed the door behind me. He shifted awkwardly. Did you tell anyone else about what's been going on? I narrowed my eyes. Just the HOA. He let out a breath, like he'd been holding it all week. Then he said something I didn't expect. Jen's been seeing someone. I blinked. What? He nodded. I didn't know. Not until she lost it over that stupid flamingo. She kept blaming you, but really she was unraveling. Guilt, I think. Or fear someone might notice. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Pity? Satisfaction? He kept talking. She started therapy 2 months ago. Said she felt like she was spiraling. Then the flamingo disappeared, and she got obsessed. Said someone was trying to erase her. Said it was personal. He looked at me, eyes glassy. That wasn't really about you. I stared at him. She called the cops on my kid. I know. She called us you people. I know, he repeated. I'm not excusing her. I don't know what to do anymore. I stood there for a moment, then said, maybe start by looking at who she really is. Not who you think she used to be. He didn't respond. He turned and walked back across the street, slowly, like someone who had just realized they were living with a stranger. Later that night, I looked out the window and saw something I hadn't expected to see. The flamingo, the real one, was back in the trash pile at the edge of their driveway, snapped in half. And on top of it, a note in Jen's handwriting. You win. I picked up the broken flamingo from the trash and just stood there for a while, holding both halves in my hands. I thought I'd feel something, victory, relief, maybe even peace. But all I felt was tired. Tired of proving we belonged. Tired of being quiet when people crossed the line. Tired of having to be the calm one in a fight I never asked for. I didn't put the flamingo back. I didn't throw it away either. It's still in my garage. And sometimes, when I see it, I think about how easy it is for people to break something just because they can't handle seeing it in someone else's yard.